Good evening, welcome to Scotland at 7. I'm Gordon Ross. In the studio this evening I have a special guest, MSP James Donnan, who is MSP for Cathcart South. James, is that correct?
Glasgow Cathcart.
Glasgow Cathcart, James. Sorry about that. And James is here to discuss with me the ramifications of Nicola Sturgeon's statement yesterday about the new approach towards a new independence referendum and how that's been going down basically with the British government today. In front of me today I have a press release which was issued by the UK government by David Lidington MP, who is the Cabinet Office Minister for the UK, and he is effectively saying that the Prime Minister has made it clear that Nicola Sturgeon's call for an Indie Ref 2 by the end of the current Holyrood Parliament is unjustified, and I use his terms there. James, I know you've just come into the studio straight off the train, and I'm launching you straight into this, but what was your reaction to David Lidington's comments today?
Can I just say one of them wasn't surprise. The comments of Mr Lidington are just in keeping with the arrogance of the Westminster government and the fear of the Westminster government when it comes to Scotland and when it comes to independence. They seem to have a complete lack of understanding of the situation on the ground here, the frustration that the Scottish people are feeling, and probably they don't even realise the contempt in which they've been holding us over the last 3 years since the Brexit fiasco is having a huge impact in Scotland.
So you believe that the Tories are really so far out of touch that they don't even know how much they're disliked here?
The Tories are so far out of touch that they don't even know how much they're disliked by other Tories, never mind by the people of Scotland. I mean, they can't get their act together in a policy that they began, that they forced through, that they have promised on a number of occasions that there is no more time, there's a number of red lines, and they cross the red line, rub it out and draw another one when it comes to Brexit. And then they expect us to take them seriously when it comes to them being able to dictate to us when the people of Scotland should be able to have their say. That's just not democracy as I recognise it.
I think many people have said that the biggest problem that people see in Scotland is this lack of democracy. When we only have, 59 MPs at Westminster at the moment, and we have a majority of SNP MPs there, 35 I believe at the moment.
We're comfortably the biggest party.
But vastly outnumbered and so unable to fight back against this. I'm looking also at the words of Mr Lidington when he was talking about what he believed was the lack of evidence for any demand for independence. He's claiming that, according to this, that consistent polling evidence in Scotland shows that despite everything else, there has not been a surge in support for Scottish independence. How do you respond to that particular claim?
I'm kind of astounded again by the incompetence and arrogance here. This is, first of all, the support for independence has stayed steady or risen since independence, and certainly since the Brexit fiasco. And we have to remember that although people were saying after the Brexit vote support for independence would rise, support for independence is going to rise once we leave the EU, because that's when the impact of Brexit is really going to take place. But the other thing is, we're in this mess that they've created because of a referendum of which there was no huge public support for. When the EU referendum was called, it was called because the Tories were in a civil war, not because the people of the UK were demanding the opportunity to leave Europe. So it's utter hypocrisy, it's what we expect from them, but it's like they rewrite history on a daily or weekly basis down in Westminster. I've just read a number of books, kind of one after the other, on the partition, 1947, and the run-up to that, and the way that the Westminster government was so out of contact and so far from reality about what was happening on the ground in India is pretty much what they're like about Scotland, and the contempt that they treated the people of India with is pretty much the contempt that we are seeing in that release from Mr Lidington today.
So you believe this is just a typical reaction then from from number 10, basically just saying the same old.
It's a knee-jerk reaction from them. It's what we get from them every time that this question is asked.
Okay.
They're our imperial masters as far as I can see.
Okay. Okay, I'll just go have a look through some of the rest of this report from Mr. Liddington, because it's quite a complicated document. But towards the end here, I'm just looking here to say that he said it. Okay. I've just been told, actually, that I've got a press release here, which I'm going to read to you now, which is from Ian Blackford of the SNP. And it gives us some figures, actually, about the support for independence based on up-to-date polling in Scotland.
Good.
And the question was whether there should be a referendum on whether Scotland should be an independent country. And within the Scottish Parliament, it was 59%. In the Westminster Parliament, that was 30%. And don't knows were 11. The ratio was up 29%. So we're also looking at a Survation poll for the SNP. And that was fieldwork done in 2018. Panel-based poll, which government do you think should make the decisions about whether there should be a new referendum on Scottish independence? Overall, the Scottish government came out at 51%. And that's quite something. Only 38% of Scots thought that the UK should decide if we get another referendum, with 12% unsure. The panel-based sample was carried out for Wings Over Scotland, and it was 1,022 adults over a period of December 2018. So I think this clearly refutes everything that Ian Liddington has been saying, that there's no appetite for it. People clearly want decisions made here by the SNP, according to these figures.
I think one thing that's perfectly obvious is that the people of Scotland now want the vast majority of their affairs to be run by the people of Scotland.
Yep.
Whoever they elect to be in positions of power. They do not want to have elected 59 MPs, no matter of which hue, to go down there and try their hardest, well, many of them, try their hardest to represent their constituencies and the people of Scotland, to be told, nah, you don't count, you don't matter, just get back in your box, go and eat your porridge, and we'll take the big decisions. And that's what's happening, no matter how hard our group try down there, and they're doing an exceptional job. Ian's been fantastic as leader of the group down there. He is one of the few politicians that has hugely risen in everybody's estimation over this Brexit thing.
Well, according to Ian Blackford today, he's put out a statement, and he says that Scotland's future cannot and will not be decided by the arrogant diktat of this sham Tory government. And that's real fighting talk coming from Ian.
Yes.
I think a lot of independence supporters will be pleased to hear that kind of talk. There's been, on social media I've been watching quite recently, there's been a lot of criticism that the SNP has not been vocal enough and not been combative enough in putting its case to Westminster. How do you feel that has gone?
I think I've come off social media for other reasons that many people will understand, I think. Twitter anyway. But I think people should recognise that there's a difference between being an activist, which I've been for many, many years, and being able to say what you want on social media, and even being a politician and being the government. Being the government, you have to take things at a much more strategic and sensible level. You still have to remember that all the time you're governing for the whole of the country. The SNP conferences this weekend, I've got no doubts that the members that go to the SNP conference will be happy with what they hear from the First Minister and from the other members of the Cabinet, because they'll be there as SNP politicians and they'll be telling them how we can move forward to get independence. Nicola's statement yesterday was clearly another mark in the road about how we go to independence. We can't just get it because we want it. We've got to win it, and we've got to make sure that we win it fairly and that we win it legally, and that's the thing that I think we all get frustrated.
So we still have work to do to convince, obviously, uncertain voters.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, our job as politicians, our job as activists, is to get out and start to make sure that by the time we press that button, that we've got the numbers to win this. you know, and win it comfortably. That would be we want to win this referendum comfortably. I'm at an age now where this is my last chance. You know, we don't win it this time. I don't see an independent Scotland. I'm pretty confident of that. Unless Methuselah.
You're not that old.
Well, 66, so okay. You know, I'll be lucky to see another one, certainly in an active role.
You're a little ahead of me. One of the other things that cropped up last night on social media, particularly when people were discussing Nicola's plan, and one of those was a certain confusion over the order in which things might happen. We heard about the new legal framework, the new legislative framework which Nicola wants to put in place and have presumably enacted at Holyrood before the referendum is actually called formally. But finishing, I understand, finishing with a Section 30 order request after that, is that correct?
Yeah, what I understood from what the First Minister was saying yesterday was that the legislation would be in place so that everything would be ready, and all we would need to do is say, that's the Holyrood part of it ready, now we're asking for that Section 30 from the Westminster Government. Now, I know the next question is, what if they don't give us it?
Yes.
Yeah, of course.
That's what everybody's been asking.
It's everybody's question. But the probability is, strong probability is, it won't be them that we're asking. You know,
who will it be?
Well, who knows?
Will it be the European Union or the United Nations?
No, I don't mean that. What I mean is May won't be there.
Oh, you mean
you know,
who might be Prime Minister, I see.
Yeah, or it might be a different government, might be a different Prime Minister. It doesn't really matter. They're going to have issues that they have to deal with. And they have shown again, I go back to the fact I've been reading about the Empire, they've shown again that no matter how much they might be attached to something, when something becomes too big a burden for them, they'll get rid of it as quickly as they can.
In discussions with people yesterday and today, we discussed the notion that the Section 30 order, which, having read back through the history of the 2014 referendum, was a document written and agreed by two men, by David Cameron and Alex Salmond, a gentleman's agreement. Is it actually, does it hold any water now after that referendum? Because it seemed to me, at least, that particular document, that one agreement, was a point in time. It was a piece of international legislation, diplomatic, if you like, between one government and another, for one specific event, not a second one. And I'm wondering if there is a possibility of a legal challenge or a new type of agreement being debated or arranged somehow.
My view would be that what happened in 2014 was the template for how it should happen this time. That when the 24 agreement, Edinburgh Agreement, was put in place, Section 30 order, all that was put in place, it meant that the process could go smoothly,
and everybody would,
you know, everything else didn't go
it
smoothly on both sides. It was, I mean, there was a lot of unsavoury behaviour from one side, and you know, obviously we didn't get the result we wanted on our side. But in terms of how it ran very smoothly. There was no legal hiccups about it. I think that that's what we want this time, because you do have to remember that there's no point in us saying we're independent if nobody's going to recognise that we're independent. You know, what's the point? We're not Albania.
So if you declared your independence but nobody actually accepted it in any other country, you would pretty much be shouting it at the dark,
exactly,
really.
You know.
Is there, you mentioned this point in time later on where the Section 30 order is again requested, perhaps for about the third time, I think, by this moment, or second or third time. If that is denied again, does that mean that the referendum would not go ahead, considering the fact that the legal framework to conduct it has already been agreed and is in place? Would it stop us from holding the referendum as an advisory vote?
I would say the answer to that question is above my pay grade, right? But
above mine as well, probably, yeah.
I suspect that there's very little that's going to stop us from having a referendum. There's a head of steam being built up here, and I think that the UK government would find it extremely difficult when we've had mandate after mandate to hold this referendum, that they don't go back to what has already been there. You know, the template is there. precedent has been set. So I think it'd be very difficult for them to not eventually say, okay, we're going to do this. Might be some tweaking round about who gets to vote and stuff like that, but I think that we would get a Section 30.
My understanding on speaking to some other SNP friends last night was that, because I was corrected on this, my own assumptions, and I was told, and maybe you can confirm this, that the Section 30 order enables the Scottish Government to admit European Union nationals into the electorate for this particular referendum, and also permits the 16 and 17-year-olds to take part in this referendum. Is that true, or is this just a red herring?
The last referendum was about 16 and 17-year-olds. That was...
But that's another precedent, isn't it?
Yes, and I suspect that one would probably hold this time. This one, I suspect if there's going to be an argument round about it, it will be about EU residents.
You think that the UK might put that as a hurdle in the way?
Yes, I think they would try to do that as a hurdle. You know, I spoke to a Conservative politician last night. We were having a friendly chat about this, right, obviously in a statement, blah, blah, blah. And he says, oh, we'll see in court if you try and go ahead with this legislation and all the rest of it. He says, we beat you there before. And he talked about the continuity bill. I says, listen, you didn't beat us. You changed the law retrospectively to make sure that it no longer applied. Well, we'll just do that again then. And, you know, that's the sort of mindset we're up against, where they think it doesn't matter how we do it, we'll beat you. You know, cheat doesn't make any difference. This is the UK that we're trying to defend. So there is a mindset there that is going to take a bit of shifting, but reality will kick in for some of them eventually, I think.
My overwhelming impression from watching this as an observer, because I'm not a member of the SNP, I'm not a member of any party, is that Holyrood itself is a construct of the United Kingdom. It's a construct like it appears to be like a gilded cage. It's a way of containing the will of the Scottish people that wants independence and preventing them from getting any further with it. The voting system has been always designed to prevent any party from getting an overall majority, and the SNP confounded that system remarkably. Yep. And it could still do it, I think, maybe do it again. But I think my final point on this evening would be, if Holyrood didn't exist, how else could we ever get free from this union? How could we end it if we didn't have that parliament? Would it be possible?
Well, the reality is that it would be much more difficult than it is just now. It's all people would say, yeah, but Margaret Thatcher said that if half the seats were for nationalist parties, then Scotland would be entitled to their independence. She didn't say Scotland would get their independence, right? And they would say, but that was just a statement she made in television, unlike, you know, anything that Alex said, which has to be held against him for the rest of his life, or, you know, once in a lifetime or once in a generation or whatever. But I think that you've just said it yourself, that this Parliament, I agree with you, almost everything you said, gilded cage, keep us in there, you know, feed them something, don't give them all, right? But we did confound it once, and I think we'll confound it again, and I think that the Scottish Parliament will clearly be the route to independence.
Okay. I've also got a press release here from the Scottish Greens, who have been a little bit quiet on the subject for a while, but they finally come out with a criticism, of course, of the SNP. And they're saying that, according to this media release, that Scottish independence must offer the hope of a genuine change of economic direction instead of mimicking the UK's failed austerity agenda. Now, I'm assuming from this that the Green Party is referring to the Growth Commission report.
Yeah, and their new Green Deal.
And their new Green Deal, which they mentioned down here, which they are promoting as a way of generating 200,000 new green jobs, as well as tackling the global climate emergency. Has the SNP developed any new policies that you know of with regard to climate change or addressing that?
Scotland's government and Scotland as a country is recognised the world over as being a leader. And what happens is, it seems to be that with opposition parties, even our critical friends, let's say, in the Green Party, they say, OK, you may be the best, but why aren't you better? Why can't you do what nobody else in the world is doing? You know, OK, you might not have all the powers, but why can't you still be the best? And I mean, that's the job of opposition. And I accept that the Greens have a particular row to plough, but I don't think they're very realistic. And I honestly think that when we're talking about independence, we should be talking about independence. We should be talking about the right of the people of Scotland to make decisions, both economic and social decisions, when we have in an independent country. And then you have all these debates about the sort of country you want, the sort of economy you want, the sort of social construct that you want round about your country. At this stage, if we get caught up, and I'm not saying this is minutiae, but if we get caught up in all the different policies about it, you're never going to please enough people to get the independence over the line.
Is there, do you think, any mileage for the SNP in adopting a more green approach to independence itself? But actually, with the Greens are promising 200,000 green jobs. Now, OK, they've maybe plucked that figure from the air. But on the other hand, we are largely being sold independence and being sold it on the basis that Scotland is going to be far greener and that these green jobs are already being delivered. We know that's happening. But we also, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, we're not hearing an awful lot of deliberate policy changes which are aimed towards that particular demographic.
We've been doing this for a long time now, Gordon. We've been changing things for a number of years. We haven't come out and said, 2 weeks tomorrow we're going to have 200,000 new green jobs. And I'm paraphrasing what they say in their press release slightly. But what we've been doing over a number of years is we've been building on the green economy, and we've been creating new jobs. And that's why we get the praise we get from world experts about what Scotland has been doing. And let's be honest, if it hadn't been for the blocks that the Westminster government had been putting on us, then we'd have been even further ahead in terms of the green jobs.
So when you're talking about when the Westminster government cut the funding for onshore wind,
yes,
for example,
yes.
Support for that. However, they seem at the moment to have kept the financial assistance in place for offshore wind for some reason, but onshore is no longer getting it. Okay, let's leave that aside for the moment. There's one other thing which I personally was talking about on my own video blog last night and this morning, which is the changing of the narrative by the British media about and around independence, the I word. Independence has become a bit like Brexit. It's become a word that people don't like to use too much because people go running, screaming from the room. Is there a way in which we can reframe this argument? Is there a way that we can counteract the growing, shall we say, British media habit of characterising our referendum as something that we have to ask permission for, and that if we don't ask permission for it, it's somehow illegal?
Well, I think part of that is the job that we have to do in the doors. What we have to do is we have to sell the idea that this is not about us being independent and free, you know, like sort of separate from anywhere else. This is about us joining the family of nations again. It's about us continuing to be members or becoming again a part of a larger Europe, in whichever form that may take, hopefully EU, but whatever form that may take. And I think that we have to sell it as Scotland just being in charge of its own affairs. I mean, that's what it is, and I think that's what every adult country wants to be.
Yes, I would agree with that. Do you think, in your own opinion, I'm not asking you as a party member, but in the event that we are prevented from having this referendum by constant can-kicking by the Tory government and the whole Brexit fiasco, which seems to have dragged on for 3 years, partly because the Tories don't want the breakup of the United Kingdom on their hands, and whoever's Prime Minister obviously doesn't want to have the ignominy of being the Prime Minister who presided over the end of the Union. Are they ever going to give permission? And if they don't, what other recourse is there?
I've already said that I think that they will be left with no option but to give permission. I think that they will find that the political pressure from us, but also from the ever-growing English nationalist wing, and I don't mean that in the sort of right-wing nationalists, but I mean...
You mean the people who just want England to be independent?
The people who supported Brexit, and not all people who supported Brexit are rabid right-wingers, and down the south there's a lot of good people that support Brexit for you know, what they see as being worthy reasons. They will be saying, let them go. I honestly believe that over a period of time, we'll be independent before that, but I think that there'll be a squeeze on those who see the union as being the most important thing in the world, because the union has always been, let's be honest here, the union has always been England. It's always been recognised as England, and I think that there's a big swathe of the people of England that will soon say, oh, what, you know what, just leave them, we don't need them, let them go on with their road, and we'll just concentrate on being England, the great England that won the Battle of Hastings and did all these other fantastic
And if Brexit fails to happen, what then?
I don't think that the desire for independence is predicated on Brexit. We wanted independence before David Cameron had that whopper of an idea, and we will want it after. I think that the narrative will clearly change. I mean, if, for example, there is some agreement made, right, and they stay in for 5 years or whatever, I don't know what they're going to do, then the narrative will change. We will still be making the case for independence, because the deal that they will have will not be what we had before the Brexit started. We will never get the deal that we had before, but also the argument remains the same. This is about self-determination. This is about a country making its decisions for its own people, and I don't think that should ever change.
Let me move on to just another point which was raised, actually raised by the First Minister herself, and that is about the continuing creeping power grab by Westminster of Holyrood's powers. Now, Nicola was, I read her speech in some detail, and although she doesn't sort of raise a flag of alarm about this, she does acknowledge that the power grab has happened, and that she expects there, if not to be a sort of takeover of Holyrood, there might at least be a disarming of it, which might be designed to disempower any future ideas of referendums or independence.
Mike
Do you think the dangers are real?
Well, Michael Russell was talking today about the UK talking about taking over state aid. It's being repatriated from Brexit. It's going to be
the 24 powers, I think it is, that they're contesting.
Yeah, and so, of course, everything that they can take, they'll take. I don't think there's any argument with that. Anything that they think they need, I think they'll take, and they'll try not to give us. However, circumstances will mean that they will give us some of it, but I think that they'll try and keep it. I just don't think that what that would do is lessen the desire for independence. Yes, I think it would probably work the opposite way.
I studied a while ago, actually, the actual the powers that the UK actually wants to take back from us, and amongst them were the powers over environmental protection. Now, I'm particularly minded here about the aspects of environmental protection that deal with fracking and extraction of shale gas. If they got control of that, then that could mean the start of fracking. It could mean that the current embargo on it, or the current moratorium, which has been declared for scientific reasons, safety reasons, might be avoided by the British government, just seizing control of those laws and maybe reducing them or repealing them. Is that actually a real danger? Are we worried about that?
I can't say it's been the forefront of my mind, that one, but I mean, if that was to come to pass, then that is a perfect example of how they're willing to damage Scotland for financial gain, for what you can be assured would go back to the UK Treasury, and for business people that I'm pretty confident will be friends of certain other people. So I think that's a perfect example, but I also think, given how strongly people in Scotland felt about fracking and shale extraction, that could easily be one of those things that just sets the people off.
I noticed also they're looking for control over fishing and the use of pesticides and chemicals in agriculture. It seems that just about every poisonous or contentious issue that you can think of is the power that they want to have.
Before they start their trade deals with Donald Trump.
Indeed, yeah, it looks like they really want to tear up the rulebook. There is one other aspect of this speech of Nicola's which I'm trying to find here. So talking about the status quo being broken, and I think everybody sort of relate to these arguments, but I've actually highlighted a couple of lines from Nicola's speech that I wanted to bring up with you. She says here, I'll just quote this to you, as the UK scrambles to do trade deals, what you've just been talking about, the inclination to impose uniformity, even in devolved areas, will lead to more Westminster centralisation. Now, Nicola seems to be acknowledging that this isn't just a tinfoil hat conspiracy theory. No. This is a real threat. Her second line on this particular subject says, it is my judgment now, and this is an interesting way of putting it, that for the first time in 20 years, there is a risk of devolution going backwards. So the risk obviously is there in Nicola's mind. She's worried about it.
And remember that Nicola and a few others are the ones that are seeing behind the scenes what is being done.
Yes.
They're seeing, they're part of discussions with ministers, they see the attitude of ministers, they will hear the small talk that goes on in all these meetings, they will know the mindset of some of the people that we are dealing with here and how they would love to get control of as much of the things as they possibly can. And as I said earlier on, and I wasn't kidding, it appears to be to get those trade deals with the US.
I was reading a report 2 days ago on the internet about secret meetings that the UK government has had with a Californian healthcare company, which appears to suggest at least that the British government is on the brink of privatising workers' health in England and Wales at least. How do you think that kind of creeping privatisation or part privatisation would affect Scotland's healthcare funding? Would it affect our healthcare funding? Anything
that lessens the amount of money that's been spent in the healthcare down south is obviously going to have a knock-on effect on us. So they're squeezing us all the time. We have opposition in the Scottish Parliament don't seem to understand economics, simple economics, and keep on asking us to mitigate more whilst we're getting our budget
money
squeezed, right? And this would just be another case of that they would leave gaps in healthcare and they would ask us to fill them with less money.
Well, I think those are all the main points I wanted to cover from Nicola's presentation yesterday. There is one last element here which I've highlighted, and this is the legislation that Mike Russell was talking about, where he aims to set out the details of the legislation for the framework bill and to put it beyond doubt or challenge our ability to apply the bill to an independence referendum. It appears to suggest, I'm saying it appears to suggest, that this new framework bill is a replacement or a more powerful piece of legislation than the Section 30 order.
Well, I think we have to wait to see how it's written, but I would certainly hope that and expect, particularly from what the First Minister and Michael have been saying, that it will be a piece of legislation that makes it quite clear that Scotland has to be in charge of Scotland's destiny. And I'm hoping that is what will come out at the end of this.
It occurred to me just before we went on air, actually, when I was looking at this, that in the event that a Section 30 order cannot be obtained, since the Scottish Government's aim here and the independence movement's aim would be to hold this referendum and have it recognised as legal, then a new declaration or a newly worded document could be prepared in which the Scottish Government and the English Government agree that although we could acknowledge that the English Government objects to us having this referendum, but they're unable to stop us. And whilst acknowledging that, we could also say to them that that we would expect them in this agreement only to acknowledge the legality of the vote, even if they disagree with the result. By acknowledge, I mention this only because I fear what I used to call the Catalanisation of the Scottish independence effort. Because a lot of people are concerned actually about the way the British government will characterise this and the way the British media will treat us. And I think if we could do something like that, it might help to defuse the situation and get us past the Section 30 brick wall. What do you think?
Yeah, anything that can show that the referendum that we are having is a legal referendum and that the result of that referendum has to be respected. And you know, one of the things that irritates me more than most is when we hear our opponents say, but you've had your vote. That was the campaign for independence started over 5 years ago. Right, well, for the referendum, right? Yeah, exactly. So over 5 years ago, the vote was 4 years ago and a bit. So I think that we're entitled to ask the question again, particularly what we've seen with what we know now about the independence referendum and some of the nonsense that was spoken to us, and the Brexit, the shambles of Brexit, and the contempt that Westminster has for Scotland is just frightening.
Can you, I have some questions here, actually not on my script this evening, but I was interested to know if the SNP has managed to move the idea of electronic or blockchain voting any further on. Do you know anything about the progress on that?
I don't even know how it works.
Okay, that is fair enough. I just thought I'd ask the question.
I've seen it a lot when I was on social media and I have no idea how it works.
The other question that many people ask me on the blog is what's happened about the Scottish Constitution. Now, there have been various constitutions written for the independent Scottish state, notably one by Dr. Mark McNaught, who I'm actually interviewing tomorrow in a completely different programme. But Mark McNaught has already finished his constitution, and he is a Doctor of International Law. He lectures at the University of Rennes in France. I've read his document. It's available on wiki pages.
Right, okay.
I understand that he's delivered it to Mike Russell at Holyrood, and also I believe senior civil servants have seen it at Holyrood as well, but so far I've not heard anything about whether it will be actioned now or whether it might be actioned in the future.
You really need to ask Mike then.
I'm going to have to wait.
You need to ask Mike. I mean,
ask Mike, okay.
Yeah.
Well, the next time we get Mike in here, I'll ask him personally.
You get my right good grilling about it.
That's about it for this evening. Thanks very much, James, for coming in to talk to us today. I reckon probably a lot of SNP MSPs are running around giving interviews today. But thank you for coming in at such short notice.
Absolutely.
Thanks very much. We'll be back on the air again, or rather I'll be back on the air again next Thursday. But of course, Scotland at 7 comes back on your screens every day except for Friday. But I'll see you all again on Thursday next week. Thanks for watching, and from all the team here at Broadcasting Scotland, good night.